He knows who built Stonehenge. He even knows their names. He swam with the Loch Ness Monster, danced with Bigfoot in the rain. Now you may say, who is this man? It's the great Danny Sheridan.
All right, welcome back into Smoke on the Water. Mark Sturgis, Price Atkinson, and let's bring on our guest, the great Danny Sheridan, the odds maker for USA Today and sports columnist. How we doing tonight, Danny?
I'm doing pretty good. How about y'all?
Oh, listen, we are sitting here in Smoke on the Water, and it is smoking right now. One time when you're here in the upstate, we're going to treat you to one of the best meals that you've ever had here at Smoke on the Water. But, Danny, let's start. You know, we got a lot of stuff to get into, but let's start right here in the Palmetto State with next week's showdown between the Tigers and the Gamecocks. What are your thoughts on that game, even though we're a week and a half out?
Well, South Carolina, if they were playing this weekend, because they're at home, they would be about a 4.5, 5-point favorite. That doesn't mean they'll win, but as you know, South Carolina has owned them lately, and they should be favored. They're very tough to beat at home. I would assume it'd be a very competitive game. I think, obviously, this year, Clemson is probably, well, they are. They're better than they've been in a while as far as South Carolina is concerned. But it's a very tough game. If they were playing at a neutral site, it'd probably be close to even.
Well, Danny, let's stay in the SEC and let's talk about South Carolina. South Carolina is right now sitting one game behind Missouri in the SEC East. And I know you like South Carolina beginning of the season. What are the odds right now? Do you think that Missouri's going to slip up in one of these final two games? And if so, does South Carolina get in? Or
slight favorite over Ole Miss, about a 3-point favorite. They could easily lose that game. And the following week, they would be close to pick 'em against Texas A&M, even though it's at Missouri. So, I think they'll lose one of those two games. Certainly, if they don't, they obviously deserve to be in the SEC championship game. But not because I picked South Carolina, but I still think they'll be in there. It's a tough to beat Ole Miss on the road, come right back and play a totally different offense in A&M. Pretty tough assignment.
Speaking of tough assignments this weekend, do you think Oklahoma State has a realistic shot of beating Baylor? Because the Bears have not beaten Oklahoma State in Stillwater since 1939.
Well, I didn't know that, but I do know that Baylor, besides their incredible run, they're 8-1 against the spread. They've been a double-digit favorite every game, and they're still 8-1 against the spread. At home, on the road at Oklahoma State, they're currently a 10-point favorite. A couple of places in Vegas have them at 9.5. It's close to double digits. So, no, I didn't know that about 1939, but this is not your grandmother's Baylor. Baylor's got a hell of a team. Do they have a chance? About Oklahoma State, it'd be just to win the game. They'd be a 3.5-1 underdog. But hell, if West Virginia can upset Oklahoma State, I think it's the third week of the season. I guess in college football, anything can happen. This will definitely be by far, this is their most formidable test. If Baylor wins this, they can sleepwalk. They'll be about 22-point favorite against Texas Tech. And I'd say 25, maybe 26 at home against Texas, who they hate and would punish.
Well, Danny, let's get to the big game in your state, and I think really probably the biggest game. Of all the big games next weekend, but the biggest game with probably the most on the line, and that's Auburn and Alabama in the Iron Bowl. Last week I think Alabama was a 17-point favorite, and correct me if I'm wrong. Alabama right now sits at I think 15.5-point favorite going into Jordan-Hare next weekend.
Right. I said 17 last week, and the 15.5 would be posted at the Las Vegas Hilton. And yes, they are. I think the preseason, I don't remember the exact numbers, but the Golden Nugget and the Las Vegas Hilton, I'm guessing they had Alabama 20, maybe as high as 24, as low as 22, but certainly a strong favorite. And then last week, 17. And then because of Alabama showing against Mississippi State, which I expected and shouldn't matter. It doesn't matter, but it matters to bettors. They go, oh, my goodness, look how bad they played. And some think Auburn played bad. I didn't think they played bad. I thought they played pretty good. But that's the line. That's the line today. I don't see much changing it unless Alabama barely beat Chattanooga. Now, you can rest assured Alabama's their 49-point favorite, and they're just going to go through the motions against Chattanooga, which is pretty much what they did against Mississippi State, except here it'll be a lot worse because they'll be pulling that first team, I would think, if not late in the second quarter, certainly by early in the third quarter.
Well, if anybody listening's taking the game, I think somebody might have a bad day because, correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, I think Auburn's, 10-1 against the spread this year, and Alabama's 10-0. I think haven't they won 8 in a row against the spread?
That is correct. They've won 8 in a row against the spread, which is unheard of. Lost the first game against the spread to Washington State, and then they won late, I guess in the last 30 seconds, or maybe at the buzzer, I don't recall, against Mississippi State. They were favored, about 6.5. But bottom line is, it's one thing to be 9-1 or 10-1. That's very impressive. But to win 8 straight games against the spread, just shows they're getting no respect for the betting public. That's incredible. 8-1. 8-1 is good, but 8 straight, and like you said, they're 10-1 against the spread, which is remarkable. I'm guessing Alabama's probably 6-4.
Okay. We're speaking with Danny Sheridan, oddsmaker and sports columnist for USA Today. Danny, what are your odds now on this final BCS title? Is it pretty much, in your mind, Alabama and Florida State? Now, of course, Bama's got the toughest road to hoe of these 4 undefeated teams sitting in the top 4. But is that pretty much where you're –
No, I disagree.
You do? Okay.
Out by far, oh, absolutely. The toughest road is Alabama. You've got to go to Auburn. Got to go play South Carolina or Missouri. So much, much tougher than what Baylor has to do. Baylor's a double-digit favorite. As I said earlier, about 9.5, 10 against Oklahoma State, and then a huge favorite against Texas Tech. Texas, and another reason why Baylor has an easier road, their conference, I think it's the only one out there, their conference does not have a playoff, a championship title game. Mm-hmm. And I've often said, I'm sure others have too, you don't have a championship game, you get to sit back and watch everybody knock everybody off December the 7th. Shouldn't be allowed to compete for the national championship, but they are. And because of that, again, they play Texas heavily favored over 3 touchdowns December the 7th. And if they finish 12-0, they do not have to worry about playing Oklahoma State or someone again because they don't have a conference game. So without being redundant, trust me, Alabama has by far the toughest.
Right.
You might plug Baylor in there. It's hard to distinguish between. Certainly Florida State's got the easiest. Then I don't know if it'd be after Alabama, Baylor, or Ohio State. But I know one thing. Alabama would sure love Baylor-Ohio State schedule, finishing in the whole season.
Well, Danny, what do you think? You just talked a little bit about Baylor. Looking at the rest of their schedule, their last 3 games at Oklahoma State this Saturday night, then at TCU, and then finishing the season at home December 7th against Texas. What do you think the odds are? I mean, do they run the table and finish this thing undefeated? Forget about the BCS championship with 3 formidable games. What do you think happens with the rest of Baylor's schedule?
They beat Oklahoma State. They'll definitely go undefeated because they'll be a huge favorite, at least 22 points at Texas Tech. Then the next week, December the 7th, when everyone's butting heads trying to win their conference title championship, they get to play Texas at home, regular season game. I think I said earlier, 25 to 26-point favorite. So if they beat Oklahoma State, they're again a 3.5 to 1 favorite to do so. I don't see how anything's possible, but they're not. They're going undefeated, and this is the only obstacle in their entire schedule. They have been a double-digit favorite over everyone this year, and again, the lowest line has been 9.5 or 10, which is what they are this week. And you mentioned Oklahoma State had not beaten them since 1939. I don't know what to think of that, but Oklahoma State's pretty tough at home, but Baylor just lost a key player on their offensive line, their left tackle, and they've got a few injuries, so it could be a very competitive game, but again, I can't assure you, but it's close to a sure thing. Baylor's not losing if they win this game. They're not losing the rest of the year.
All right, as we switch to your odds on the Heisman Trophy, how do you see that panning out? And quite frankly, Danny, does this little storyline that's come up with Jameis Winston in the last 10 days, does that have any effect on the outcome of this Heisman Trophy race?
Only if he's charged with a crime, then he's out of the Heisman race, period. But as it stands right now, no effect because no one knows what's going on, and I guess they'll have to wait for the Florida Attorney General to decide if he's going to pursue the case a year later. But Winston would be right now a solid favorite. I mean, a solid favorite, like 1-4, maybe 1-5 to win the Heisman, assuming no charges are brought. Of course, that would suspend him immediately from Florida State's team. And then next, right behind him, he's lowered his odds. I didn't think he would, but he has. He's probably the best player in the country. He deserves the Heisman. He won't get it if Winston's in the race, but Manziel would be a 3-1 underdog, and then you'd follow very closely by A.J. McCarron and Bryce Petty. I think I had them both last week at 7-1, and that sounds about right. And either one of them could move up, but not like I just can't imagine them. Unless let's see, if there's a tremendous Heisman vote against Manziel, which has been, I think, most of the year, then McCarron or Petty, probably McCarron, could really slide in there. But I look for those four for sure to be in New York, and they'll probably invite Marcus Mariota to New York. At least I would definitely think those four, maybe him being the fifth, to the ceremony.
Well, Danny, final question before we let you get out of here. Moving to a couple coaching, one coaching search and then one who knows what will happen down at Florida. Right now, what do you think will happen with Will Muschamp down in Gainesville, and what do you think, or what are you hearing at all on the Southern Cal coaching front in Los Angeles?
Well, Southern Cal, they're the names you've read, and I think I made odds yesterday or the day before. I think Orgeron, I think it's safe to say that he will be on the staff either as the head coach or as a defensive coordinator, but I think he'll be on the staff. And I haven't put any odds out on who the Southern Cal coach will be. If he reports are they're going to make him the highest-paid coach in the country, so they can get anyone. They're obviously looking at Sumlin. They've interviewed Jack Del Rio, and it's a plum of a job, but no better than 4 or 5 in this area. And you mentioned about Will Muschamp. He's a solid 25-1, maybe higher favorite to, no matter what happens against Florida State, to be retained, and he will get to coach next year. And next year, if his walking wounded are healthy, they'll be a very good team, and wouldn't surprise me if they were slight favorite against Alabama. I think they play them in Tuscaloosa the third game. But that's assuming everybody comes back healthy, and I assume they will. And Jeremy Foley's a strong athletic director, and that's what it takes. Usually when you get the vote of confidence, that's it. You're dead in the water. But Foley's going to bring him back. He said he would, and I think he will. Well, I don't know, but I'd be shocked if he did. He's not going to be swayed by the fans. That's why he's one of the better athletic directors in the country, maybe the best.
Well, Danny, thanks for your time tonight. People can follow you on Twitter at Danny Sheridan1. Anything else you want to get out there to our listeners?
No, I really appreciate that. It's always a pleasure being on your show. I'm really looking forward to the next couple of weeks, and not just the Alabama-Auburn game. You mentioned a lot's on it. There'll be more people watching that in the Midwest and Southwest and probably in the South. It's a big game. Obviously, Ohio State or Baylor, they have no chance of being in the Heisman race. I mean, in the national championship race, unless Alabama or Florida State loses. And I think it's safe to say, and I think your listeners would agree, Florida State's not losing, unless for some reason they didn't have Winston at quarterback. They're not going to lose to anybody. The question is, how bad will they beat them?
Well, all right. Well, thank you for your time and
having me on.
All right. Happy holidays coming up to you, Danny.
Happy holidays to you. Take care. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Danny. The great Danny
the
Sheridan.
The great Danny Sheridan laying it out for you in the final week and a half of this college football. I guess technically 2.5 weeks, because Championship Saturday has some Big 12 regular season games involved. As he mentioned, Big 12, why would you ever expand unless you find out that it's going to keep you out of the college football playoffs? That's a huge advantage that the champion of that league doesn't have to play that 13th game that every other league in power football does.
Yeah, some listeners probably saying, well, hey, how about this weekend? Well, this weekend has become Cupcake City. This has become Tune-Up Saturday.
Tune-Up for rivalry weekend.
So, I mean, everybody's doing it now where you throw in an Idaho, you throw in a UT Chattanooga, Georgia Southern, Citadel, Coastal, just to fine-tune you before you go into that rivalry weekend. But, yeah, I mean, there's a lot. We got a lot of football to play, and maybe not so much this weekend outside of, maybe a handful of games, but the following weekend is –
it's the best weekend of the year.
You're not going to get a lot of argument from me.
The only thing, I think he misunderstood me when I